Welcome home, neighbors.
Welcome home, neighbors.
Hello, neighbors.
We're listening from
Arizona,
Florida,
Maryland, New York, New Jersey,
Minneapolis,
California,
Utah,
Michigan,
Iowa,
Massachusetts,
Georgia,
Canada,
our home resort is
Animal Kingdom, Polynesia,
Bay Lake Town,
Old Key West,
Riviera,
Boardwalk,
Alani Resort,
Hilton Head,
Boulder Ridge, Copper Creek,
Grand Floridian,
Saratoga Springs,
Beach Club,
and Wilderness Lodge.
and you're listening to
You're listening
to
my
DVC Voice.
Well, welcome home, everybody. So my name is Chad, and I am the host over here at the My DVC Points Live. And tonight we've got a really interesting show going on. It's a panel discussion to talk about this coronavirus crisis and what's going on. We've been seeing all kinds of crazy posts out there this week and some ideas about things that Disney should be doing. And so I looked at it and I was like, you know what? Some of the core principles of our show is we create content so that members can make an informed and educated decision about what's best for their family. Okay, whether it's what resort they like, how they're going to spend their points, what they're going to do with their points, we try to come back in and give people some educational stuff and help them make informed decisions. So when I was looking at this, I started seeing a bunch of posts, and a lot of them were like ideas that just really didn't align with the contract that we've all signed as DVC owners. So that's when I thought, okay, why don't we come back in and host a panel? And then I was looking back, and Tim Krasniewski over at DVC News had a great article that we'll be talking about, and we'll bring Tim up a little bit later on in the show today. But we'll be talking about all of that kind of great stuff, like what's in our contract, how does this coronavirus impact us, what's some previous examples from other timeshares, and how could this impact us? So that being said and done, I would first like to introduce and bring on board Vicky. So, hey, Vicky, how are you today?
Hey, Chad. How are you doing this evening? Good.
Oh, I'm doing great. Doing great. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And Vicky, you're a brand new DVC member, and I know you have an awful lot of personal expertise in contracts.
Yeah. So I'm an attorney in California, but we're talking about DVC today, not, the law per se. But I put my offer on a resale on March 12th. Which is right before everything basically shut down.
Exactly. And so I thought, well, if I have a brand new member who specializes in contract law, who just got done looking at all of this stuff, why don't I see if I can tap you on the shoulder and just get you to explain some of the fundamental terms in our contract and have a little bit of a discussion on that. So,
yeah.
So that part's going to come up. I'm going to come back in and introduce the rest of the guests right now. And what we'll do is bring all of the panelists up, and then we'll bring Vicky back to really go into the contracts in a deeper dive. And then we'll come back in and start our panel discussion. So let's bring up Tim. And Tim. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show. Oh, Tim, we lost volume. I don't know if you're muted. So I'll let you work on that for just a second, and I'll come back in and we'll jump ship and we'll jump down to Tom, who's next on the list. A little bit crazy doing this with 7 people tonight. So, hey, Tom, welcome. I guess welcome home. Welcome back to this show.
Welcome home is right. I'm just hanging out in the DVC lounge, breaking Disney rules. Just hanging out here. No one said anything yet, so I think we're good.
Well, I think you've got the social distancing thing going on there, right?
I'm surviving on free soda and from the freestyle machine and some chips that I found in the back room. It's going pretty well.
Awesome. Good deal. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Tom. Let me bring up the next guest as well. And so we've got Russ from DVC Info. How you doing today, Russ?
Good.
So
how are you?
Doing great. And we wanted to invite you back to the show. I know you were on episode 16. We're looking forward to coming back in and talking about contracts and the panels and just to see what's going on in your community and the post over at DVC Info, because I know there's always a lot of great lively discussion going on over there.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Good deal. And so now I'd like to introduce Brian Flock. So let's bring Brian up.
Hey, Chad.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, welcome back to the live. We just did trivia night with you the other night, and your episode that we interviewed you with was episode 71. So,
Right. Yep. We talked Riviera.
yeah, and you're another relatively new owner that also has some attorney background as well. So I figured that would be another great thing. And then you and I had quite the lively discussion going on this week in the My DVC Points community group. So I figured, let's just bring this online and include a few more people into it. And the other thing of it is we're not opposed to opposing points of view on this show. What we do ask is we always remain respectful. Okay. And as long as we can keep that involved, because I've never learned anything from somebody that agreed with me on 100% of the stuff, right? So it's just through conversation and dialogue that we start to learn.
Growth through that is something with. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's see if we've got Tim. Tim looks kind of gray right now. So maybe he's got some mic issues. So that being said and done, let's come back in, and I'm going to ask everybody, what is your countdown timer at? And when's everybody coming home next? We'll start that question out there. And looks like there were some comments here from the field. Some people might be locked up. Maybe I'm locked up. So I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Man, it's a crazy thing with the internet tonight. I'm not sure what's happening. So, Tim, are you with us tonight?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Awesome. So this is just a crazy kind of show. I'm not sure what's going on with all of our issues, but anyways, welcome back to the show, Tim. And Tim, tell us a little bit about DVC News and what you guys do over there. Because I've only done the one podcast episode with you so far. We haven't got to collaborate much on anything else.
I do DVC News. I mean, that's the simplest way to explain it. I try to keep on top of whatever's happening on a day-to-day basis that members would be interested in, and write feature stories from time to time, and got some great contributors that share some information of their own. So
yeah, it's a great site. I highly suggest everybody in the DVC community get on his mailing list as well. So all kinds of great stuff that's coming through that. So, okay then. Yep. So let me drop you down and just start to go through some of these countdown shares. And it looks like, just coming back up here, Daniela, you're with me. It's like middle of May and August. I'm kind of losing sight of the days now, but Matthew's got May 19th going on at Beach Club, 147 days for Mark, 235 for Samantha. Ashley's 129. And Patricia says 33. Stella's saying Thanksgiving 2020. And 133 for Scott, October. And then Gwendolyn says 90 days exactly. So, and I know, yeah, you were supposed to be going on Sunday. Tom was supposed to be there right now. So it's a little brutal. Okay. It's a little brutal. I know I just booked Grand Cal for February today. I just canceled my Grand Cal stuff this year and banked the points. I haven't even figured out the days yet because I banked all the points all the days I could get. I figured I'll hold them and figure it out and when I'm ready. 133 days. And that's because our school schedule hasn't come out yet for next February. 129 days. John's saying 167. Mike is at 128. 200 for Rob. And then Joe Woofers, 430. I'm with you. I'm supposed to be there at that time, Joe. We'll meet up if we're there, but it doesn't look good. But I think there's a really helpful story here is that members are still counting down days and we're still looking forward to going home. So that being said and done, I want to come into today's show and start talking about some of what's in our contracts and why we should start to be thinking like an owner. In order to do that, I'm going to bring Vicky back up and we're going to start to talk about what's in the contracts. So Vicky, let's go through some of these key terms from the contracts. And this isn't like a really deep legal analysis, but it does kind of set a framework for this discussion.
Yeah, so the timeshare is very similar if anyone's been in a homeowners association. So it's kind of a similar structure where you buy into a real estate interest, but then somebody else is managing everything that happens with it for your membership. And so you're an owner, but somebody's running the show, right?
Yep.
And so the person that built the DVC resorts, it's Disney Vacation Development Inc. It's a company, and they deed you your interest. But then somebody else runs the day-to-day operations, banking, borrowing, the perks, things like that. And that's Disney Vacation Club Management. Oh, right there. You have it there.
Yeah.
LLC.
So just this was just some cut and paste to some key things from our contract that it says DVD, Disney Vacation Development. They're the people who build the brand new resorts and sell us the points.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So we buy our points and our ownership interest from them. And then what happens is, depending on where your resort is, Disney Vacation Club Management LLC is the company that administrates all the points. It's member services. It's the people that hires the management company for housekeeping and all of that kind of fun stuff. So I bring this up because I think it's a really key point to start thinking like owners. Okay. Because we own this. And just like you were saying, it is called a condominium association, the same that many of us have for our personal residences as well. Okay. We own it. We're on the deeds. Somebody else does some level of management. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a core thing in this whole conversation, is that we're resort owners, not consumers. Okay.
Yeah. So like when people, they maybe booked a hotel room, well, they can't go. That's different. They were booking a hotel room, which is more like, you purchased something, like it's more like personal property, but now I can't do that thing anymore. I can't go to the park. It's like a park ticket, right? And they get a refund, but it's not the same thing. Now you bought something and you own it. In our purposes, it's pretty good. It's only, a contract date, not like other timeshares where it's like forever. Mm-hmm. So that is actually a good benefit. But yeah, it's definitely after you are an owner and now this is your thing until the end of the contract date.
Yeah. And for contract expiration dates and all kinds of stuff along those lines. So I think that's a key thing to come into. And then I asked you to look up, because we've been talking about what's changed in the rules. And so far, what Disney Vacation Management has said is we're going to change the rules of the contract as a temporary deal. And we're going to allow you to cancel these reservations and not go into the holding period. Okay. And we're going to modify the rules for borrowing so that if we cancel your reservation and you can't come, we will put back your points and we will unborrow them. Okay. And put them back. That was two big changes to the contract. And so I looked at this and I was like, okay, Vicky, can you find for me the clause that says they can kind of do what they need to do? And so sure enough, you pulled it out of the contract right here. As I start to come down and look at this, okay, under the miscellaneous amendments, the DVC operator, which is the Disney Vacation Club Management, reserves the right to amend these rules and regulations in its discretions. These may change a club member's right to use, exchange, or rent club members' ownership interest and may impose obligations upon the use and enjoyment of club memberships, ownership interest, and appurtenant club membership. So, Vicky, I read this and go, they can pretty much do what they want to do.
Yeah. And if you keep going, they just post it on the website. That's it. That's all they need to do. They don't need to run it through any, you don't have to sign it back. They don't have to run it through any government. They can just change it, which they did here. They announced, hey, we're going to put the borrowed points back into the use year they came from. And that was it. And it was done.
Yeah. I think that's a key point that you brought up right there, is all they have to do is they post it on the website and tell us that the rules have changed. And that's kind of it. Okay. And I think we all have to be comfortable with that because that's what's in our contract. Okay. Now we can have discussions internally as DVC members in a community hall, just water cooler talk is, are the rule changes fair? But there's a lot of issues that come into this. Okay. And so thank you for outlining some of these high level issues. And so what I want to do now is start to come back over into and start looking at some of the other opportunities. So does anybody have any questions for Vicky that's listening right now? Anything that we should do, because I'm limited to a few people on the screen at a time. And so I just wanted her to come in for this little section as well. So if we've got a question for Vicky, we'll put it up here. I'm starting to read through them now. And I know Ed was saying that, he's listening with interest. And again, I'm I'm very comfortable with these terms. I knew them when I signed the contract. And I think a lot of us buy into DVC with a little bit of faith in the Disney brand that they're going to do the right thing. And so far, I think they have. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I think both of these rule changes were really to serve members and help them get more out of their membership as opposed to just going by the letter of the law. Okay. Some people say it's not enough. Some people want more. Some people want a lot more. And we'll talk about that coming up. So, and Mary was saying, I think Disney will do the best they can. We need to be reasonable. It's not like anyone has been through this before. And
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. It's totally new. So if this had happened before, you can imagine later that they are going to write something into this, that whatever they decide, they will add it to the rules and regulations after this. But this is so new that it's not provided for because it's never occurred before.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay. And then people are starting to make some comments as well that we'll bring up in our panel discussion. Like the annual pass holders will be able to add time to the end date as a result of this closure. And people have asked, can they do that? And we'll talk about that in the panel. And then what about the contract issue that I made a reservation and they're not upholding it? We'll talk about that in the panel as well. I think Gina brought up this really good deal that we own a house and our house got condemned. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it their fault that they can't, that the state of Florida is shut down? I don't know. Like that's a really good question there. Okay. But these are issues that the member community have, and we do need to talk about them and kind of discuss through them. And then the other question that came up was any reduction in maintenance dues while the resorts are closed. Okay. That's another really good issue we'll bring up for the panel is what about this time when, if you look at the transportation costs, we pay a ton of money for transportation costs to run those boats and buses back to the resorts. Okay. They're obviously not doing that now. Is that any money savings? We'll bring that up with our panel. Great deal. And so Eric just says, can we recap as we move forward? Sure. And just to recap, this whole section, we are not consumers in here. We are owners, and we have bought a deeded interest, and we have rules and regulations, and there's parties involved. Okay. And part of why I bring up this Disney Vacation Club development right here is because that's the people who sold us the points. There's another LLC called a management company, and neither one of those are the hotels that are out there nor the parks. Okay. So those are both individual business entities that are out there, and that'll come up later in our discussions. So, and then, yeah, Danielle does make the comment. I feel you could drive a bus through that statement in the contract. It is.
It's definitely.
It is very wide. Okay. And at the end of the day, you have to come in and say, I'm buying in, just knowing that Disney will do the right thing. Okay.
Well, everyone thinks another reason that it's a big thing for Disney to do the right thing is because future people that want to buy DVC, they'll know what had happened after Disney decides what to do at the end of all this. And that affects the future buyers, whether they want to buy in or not. So
yeah, it does. It definitely does. And they have a reputation. So let's transition now over to our panel discussion. And I'm going to bring Tim back into the show. And then we'll bring Tom back and Russ back and Brian back. Okay. Then we'll start to align everybody up for a little bit better view with the graphics. So hey guys, so we had some really good questions pop up from some of the listeners, and I'd like to just talk through them. Okay. So the first one was dues refunds. What's your guys' thoughts on dues refunds?
And I don't know anything, but I assume the budget's been set for this year already, right? So wouldn't it come more in the form of just lower dues next year or a contraction of dues? I don't think they're going to give us money back. I just think we're going to have lower dues next year. That would be my guess.
Yeah, that's my take on it, is they would come back in and say, we have a surplus because we didn't have to spend all of the money for staff and cast members and transportation and other things. And okay, it's going to result in a surplus that should be applied towards future stuff. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, what we
When
don't
it
know.
comes
Go ahead, Tim.
when it comes to the operating portion of the dues, which is the bulk of it, about 2/3 of our dues go towards the resort operating costs. DVC makes, on one side, granted it's just an estimate every year, and on one side they make a guarantee that if they've underestimated the cost, they are going to cover it. On the flip side, if they've overrated and paid more than it costs to operate the resort, which may happen this year, what they typically do is at the board meeting in December, they pass a resolution to take that excess and put it into the capital improvements budget of the resort. So, when it goes in that way, the future savings are probably very, very small on a per point basis. It could be bigger, this year, depending on how much they're saving. They could do something unprecedented and they could offer credits or something. But that's what they do in the past.
Well,
and they don't disclose on a resort by resort basis how often we're under, how often we're over. So it's really hard to gauge, what level their accuracy is on that typically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Looking at past practices here. Okay. That's a really good point to come back in and look at that. Okay. So, but I'm with you. I think of them cutting us a check. Nah, that's probably not going to happen. Right. So I really don't see that happening, but it is good to know that they take whatever, historically they've taken the excess and applied it towards the capital improvement fund, which is what they use every 7 years when they do a soft refurbishment and every 14 years when they come back in and they do a hard refurbishment, like we see, like just completed at Old Key West last year and is going on right now in Saratoga. So
let me ask this. So does an increase in that fund, does that move up any renovations? Does that make them happen sooner because they have the money sooner? Or does that just have no effect at all? They just have extra money lying around.
I think because they adjust the amount of our dues that goes towards the capital improvements every year, I think you could see that segment of the dues theoretically come down in 2021. But I can't imagine a reason to accelerate refurbishments or something like that, especially if we've got rooms sitting empty for several months and not incurring any more wear and tear right now.
Well, and they can only take so many rooms out of the inventory at a time, right? So it's we can't have all these rooms under refurbishment and then no availability.
Got it. Now, Tim, let's shift over to your article as well. Can you give us like the high level nutshell of the argument from your most recent article on this, the one where we talk about the Honda Civic?
Yeah,
which I thought was a great illustration.
Well, I think, I read sorry, I got really close to the camera there. I think the big issue that's frustrating a lot of people, and maybe what you're looking for as an introduction, is the fact that DVC doesn't have a firm policy on this now. They don't really, they've made very vague statements. They've got a policy now for what points they're allowing to come back and which ones they aren't. There's some people with points that expired on March 31st who are hanging out there wondering, did I just lose them? Is DVC going to do something for me? And they won't give answers to that right now. And, in following conversations online, somebody used a great line this week. I can't remember exactly where I read it, unfortunately, to give them credit, but the line was that you don't assess the damage to your house in the middle of a hurricane. And that's basically where we are right now. DVC's got a problem because, however many thousands of owners we have out there, we, via points, are allocated so much time to use this timeshare, that's where the term comes from, each year. And suddenly they've lost weeks worth of accommodations across 15 resorts. So they can no longer accommodate everybody.
We have a flexible system. Okay. And I know Vicky did some research on this, and I saw Shannon do some posts on it this week as well, who's our normal co-host. And she does an awful lot with another timeshare company that sponsors her pageant, the Miss Florida pageant. It's done by a timeshare company down there. Okay. And they were telling their people that had fixed weeks, if we're closed during your fixed weeks, I'm sorry, we were closed. You'll get your week back next year. Okay. Meanwhile, you still have to pay all your dues and everything else. And that's how they were attributing the loss here to fixed point usage. Okay. Or fixed week usage. In a flexible system and they're down, that's where this comes in and creates all kinds of a new bailiwick of issues. And what I heard out of your article was we don't know how big the problem is, so we don't know how to scale the solution yet. Okay.
Right.
We're really hesitant to write a rule saying we'll give everybody their points back that they couldn't use. Let's say you had a May use year or an April use year and all those points expired in March, or you had an April use year and here in another few days, everybody's points are going to expire again. We don't know if we can accommodate the rule to give everybody their points back. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, suffice it to say that if the resorts were to open, say, on June 1st, they're going to have a lot more flexibility and it'll be a lot smaller problem to deal with than if it's July 1st or August 1st or September or whatever. So it's, in the article, I walked through some different scenarios showing how there's actually a little bit of excess points in the system that, banking and borrowing are going to come into play. It goes without saying that people will probably be in more of a banking mode for 2 or 3 or 4 years as opposed to a borrowing mode. If there's so many points out there and fewer rooms and people can't get reservations, they're going to bank their points, I would hope. But it's impossible to know what route they're going to take at this point without knowing how big the problem is.
That's it exactly. And one of the things in the contract that you pointed out is that they can prohibit borrowing points. Okay. They also have the right to prohibit banking points in situations if the point economy gets too hot. Okay. So those are tools in the contract that are in their toolbox. Okay. And I think you mentioned as well is they could hold off on some of the refurbishments that they've got scheduled to free up that inventory because they had planned on closing down buildings at a time at Saratoga Springs. Those are massive buildings. Okay. I think one of those buildings is almost as big as the whole Grand Cal Resort. Okay.
Talk about bad timing.
Yeah.
46 rooms. That's purely speculative. There may be, contracts with contractors in place that would keep that from even being an issue with the refurbishment being delayed. We have no way of knowing. But then when you get into, I can't remember, there were 2 resorts. I think there were 2 or 3 other resorts that I mentioned that were either on the schedule for this year or for next year even. I want to say Boulder Ridge and Grand Floridian, maybe. Those might be easier to delay because they haven't started yet.
Yep. Maybe they don't have those contracts nailed down and set in stone yet. And so that's another good point. I think the other thing that you mentioned was they own, now I think this is unlikely from a financial perspective, but they still own like 75% or almost 70% of the Riviera resort points. So that inventory is all the developers. Okay. They could choose to open that up to the members as a, feature of goodwill. Okay. And let us use our points there. Okay. The same thing probably goes with Alani. They're still selling points left at Alani. And so we could be able to see some excess points be taken up that way. However, I think that's a little, if they did that, I would just be mouth dropped because it's such a financial gift to the membership community. And it would be such a wonderful thing of them saying, hey, look, we're going to take it on the chin to make things right for our members in this difficult time. Okay. Yeah.
Right now that 70-ish% that you mentioned at Riviera, Disney owns that. So they can take those 250 rooms and make them available to cash paying guests, and they keep none of the proceeds from that. So they're right, because those rooms aren't part of the system. We collective owners that, so we can't use it yet. If Disney were to take the move of adding from a legal perspective, owners have the first right to that. So we can book all of those 250 rooms and you know, if they aren't booked by a certain point, Disney could get some revenue out of it, but it's you know, they basically be saying goodbye to that. So
Yeah, I think their breakage income is about ready to take a hit this year. Which, if it does, we get the first 2% of that, and anything that we would have gotten back from maintenance dues from lower stuff, by us not allowing that much breakage, we would end up not be getting that breakage income. Okay, so that could offset whatever dues gains we get, and that's 2% of the operating budget. So that's a really good point there.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's a whole lot of money. And since we get I think it's 2.5%. But since we get the first, you know, cut of that, it may not be impacted at all. What it's talking about is basically a credit to our annual dues. We get, you know, if you look at the resort budgets, there's a breakage line on there, and it could only be, I'm doing this from memory, you know, 10 or 12 cents per point per year that's coming back to us as a credit. And since we get the first piece of that, if any rooms trickle through, you know, that may not be, that may still be there. You know, there's still going to be people who aren't renting all those bungalows and some of that kind of stuff.
So let's go to Patricia's question here. So annual pass holders being able to get time back, what do you think the chances of us getting time added to our contracts are?
Vicky might be able to speak on whether or not I'm accurate in this, but when I'm going back about 10 or 12 years when they offered the extension at Old Key West, if people are familiar with that, it was originally, the contract was going to end in 2042. They extended it for 14 or 15 years, 12 years, whatever it was. The way they did that legally was, the Resort Association for Old Key West leases the land from another Disney entity. The condo owners don't own the land. They own the buildings. Disney keeps the land. So what they did was they extended the ground lease. They said, we're going to extend this agreement between us for 12 more years. So with that move, seemingly everybody at Old Key West got an extra 12 years. But what Disney then tried to do was say, well, you really only get to keep those 12 years if you pay us more money. And we're going to ask you to sign this quitclaim deed and give the 12 years back to us if you don't want to pay more. So to circle around to this, they could seemingly, if they wanted to extend these ground leases on each resort by a year, they could. But in my mind, it would effectively extend the ownership for everybody at the resort. So it's not just a remedy for the people with expiring points and unbankable points. It's an extra year for everybody. And I lost my train of thought. It's, you know, if you're dealing with like owners at Riviera or the newer resorts, they might not view it as much of a remedy that you're giving me something I can't use for 48 or 49 years. So there's that issue too.
Well, not only that, but I look at that and I go, that Old Key West extension was a fiasco and a half because it required everybody to sign notarized documents and send them back and file new deeds and new deed registries. And I think you just posted an article not long ago that they're just now getting around to filing those deed extensions, 8-10 years later? Okay, so I look at that solution and go, that's just too administratively expensive to pull forward. It's a great thought, though, but I don't think they could do it. Okay.
I just wonder.
I think it.
Oh, sorry, Tim.
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like you said, is that really gonna make people happy and feel good about it? I mean, because it's a short-term pain right now, right? It's everybody's upset about losing their points right now. I don't know if I'm really gonna care if they throw an extra year on my contract 35 years from now. Like that's not gonna make me feel better right now. That's gonna make me just be like, okay, great, I got another year for 35 years from now. Awesome. Like it's that in my mind, if I were losing points, which I'm not in the situation where I am, but if I were, that wouldn't do anything for me. That wouldn't make me happy.
Yeah, that's true.
Me personally. Yeah,
that's true. Okay. Cameron brings up the statement, weren't the hotels and the staffs being paid up through yesterday? Yes, they were for the staffs, but they weren't necessarily running all the buses the whole time, which is an expensive proposition. Okay. And
well,
so,
don't forget they're still paying the benefits for all the employees too. That's a big part of the.
That's a big chunk of change.
Absolutely,
right?
They're still paying all the premiums for the health insurance and all the other benefits that they're doing. So they're not paying the wages, but they're still paying benefits.
That's absolutely. And so, yeah, to your point, we might not be getting all that much. And then I know member services is clocking overtime like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, I'm sure.
Those poor call center reps are just grinding away every ounce they can get out of them right now. And that's kind of the business that I'm in. So I have all people feel for member services and the call center reps, and they overall do a phenomenal job. So, okay. And then Mike was saying earlier on that comment, I'd rather dues go to dues reductions than to a capital reserves budget. So pay me now as opposed to pay me later is what he's saying. And
it's, I wouldn't take it off the table. I mean, I don't have any insight into the conversations that are having to that end inside of DVC. In a normal year, like I said, they don't tell us which resorts go over and which go under and what the dollar amounts involved are. It's probably not real significant. They just throw it in the capital reserves and create a new budget for the year. But under these unusual circumstances, if it's a significant amount of money, I wouldn't put it past them to say, here's a credit of so much per point because we didn't use it in 2020.
Yep.
So Chad, I'm just curious, because to go back to something somebody said, I'm curious how many of us on this panel are actually affected by the issue or losing points right now. I'm not.
So I know you are, Brian. I'm probably going to lose 14 points. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to lose probably. I have a trip in May, a June use year, and a trip that was in April. I'm going to lose my entire use year of Grand Cal points for the year.
Yeah.
200 points. So that for me, that just, it would help.
It stings,
I think, yeah.
Right?
Oh, it stings a lot because I bought a fully loaded contract with 200 extra points at the time on a resale market, at kind of a peak of the Grand Cal resale purchase price. So, that resort, I think I could see the argument at the Walt Disney World resorts that we're going to give you the points back. They won't be restricted. The resorts open up. Potentially you'll have other places. A lot of times you can play around with availability at Walt Disney World. It's hard, but you can play around with availability at Walt Disney World in a way that I can't. If I don't book Grand Cal at 8 or 9 months out, I'm sunk, right? There's no using those points.
If you do the studios and you don't get them at 11 months there, okay?
Yeah.
And there's been multiple times, I own Grand Cal as well. I've tried to do it 11 months on the day and all 23 of them are gone. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just the reality of Grand Cal, especially if there's like D23 or a Moonlight Magic or something else going on there. They're gone.
So I just come back and I orient. I know the discussion's oriented that we're owners. As a lawyer myself, I sort of look at the condo association ownership structure that they've set up is, it is a contract between us and DVC. But it's not the same kind of condo association that we would all buy into if we were owning condos in like a building, right? We don't really have a voice in the board. We don't really have a vote in how the condo association operates. That's all Disney. The contract is very one-sided, as someone pointed out. Disney could drive a bus through the contractual agreement and do kind of whatever they really want. And so then I come back and I look at, and I know I said this kind of on the post, I come back and I look at the way that they're handling other situations around the park. And there are agreements in place there, right? There are agreements with annual pass holders that say, you suffer the burden of park closure. They didn't lean on that to say, well, sorry, you can't use your pass, but it's in the contract that way. What they said is, we're going to make this product usable that you purchased. And I look at that with the cruise line. I look at that with the hotel stays. They're sort of coming back in and saying, look, we're going to make the product usable to you that you lost. Nothing that DVC has done so far has made the product usable for the membership that's losing the points. I don't think in a realistic way.
Because people were going to lose points from unborrowing. Okay. They were going to lose points from holding accounts. And so they offered flexibility there to say, hey, look, we're still going to let you guys use the points, but we have to draw a line someplace. Okay.
That's fair. I think that Disney has a lot of levers they could choose to pull on the back end. I think we've discussed some, but I think there's sort of a lot of possibilities here. And I want to go back to something somebody said at the very beginning of the show, which is, one, I think Disney did the absolute right thing by closing here. Like, let's just be clear about that. I'm not going to be the person that if they open the park, I'm rushing right back to use my points, right? That's not me. So they did the absolute right thing to do that. They did the absolute right thing with, I think, the bulk of the cast members. I think they do the right thing most of the time, and that's the product that we bought into. And so I have every faith they're going to come back and do something here. What's interesting to me is understand what could that something be, because they don't seem to be constraining themselves to the legalities of the agreements around annual passes, hotel room stays. Because I just pulled up the hotel room booking contract a second ago, and it basically says, look, if we have to cancel on you, all you're entitled to is your money back. Well, on the hotel side, they're saying, no, we'll give you your money back and incentives. Same thing on the cruise line, right? So it's that. What is the thing they're going to do to sort of make this better?
It's incentives
right?
to get you to come back. Okay. In our contract, we're on the hook. Okay. We're coming back. They don't have that incentive to get us to come back isn't there because contractually we're coming back. Okay. It's
right. Or we could choose to sell the product, and depending on how Disney acts in this moment, people could say the viability of that product doesn't set it apart from other timeshares in the way that they advertise. It doesn't come with the same weight of the sort of Disney brand and Disney service we've come to understand. And so, like, I liked Vicky's comment in the beginning that I think Disney needs to be very careful in this moment around how they handle this in a way that makes the product continue to have viability, right? And look, at the end of the day, I will say my bottom line is anything that keeps the product going. Right. Like if Disney has to do something that's going to bankrupt the product, yes, I'd much rather keep my remaining however many 30 plus, I'm at Riviera, so 49 years worth of contract than lose the product altogether. But I do have hope Disney will come back in with something. So, yeah.
I think if
go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead. I think if from a customer relations standpoint, once they know that the resorts are going to reopen whenever that date is and how many points are at risk here, they've got a very narrow window to respond. And then you get to the point where they can't unring that bell. There's going to be a certain amount of outrage, and that's going to live on the internet for a long time. And it has the potential to impact future sales. They could come back 2 months later and say, oh, we're really sorry. We should have done something. We'll do something now. But that's not going to completely erase the memory in the minds of people. So, once they get closer to that opening date, they got to be ready to respond if they're going to. And I tend to think that they will do something. I don't know how to, I don't even want to speculate too much about what it might be,
And again,
just about anything that Disney does is going to cost them money.
Yep.
And that's sort of the key, I think,
or
finding out a way to give extra accommodations or something, whether it's the Disney collection or something. I guess I just did speculate, but that seems to be the most one-for-one way to do it. If you start talking about annual passes and free dining and free merchandise and all this kind of stuff, people are going to say, well, I don't like that. That's not for me. I had points. I want a room. I want this stuff. So,
And I guess I've seen a couple comments here talking about DVC communicating to us. I personally think that they've done a good job communicating. I think they said 4 emails in a 2-week period, but I think there's no good answer right now, right? They said they're looking into it, right? And what else are they supposed to say? That's the corporate way of saying we have no idea what we're going to do. That's what they're trying to say is we don't know. We don't know what the impact
we got
is.
this week said nothing, but we're looking forward to seeing you again and have some pixie dust. Okay.
Well, I got a call from a call from member services today in response to an email I sent them on this issue, and it was basically, we hear you. We're working on it. We're looking at this. We don't know the answers. We don't have the answers. The one thing that came out of the phone call I thought was really, really interesting and sort of made me feel this like Disney's getting it right kind of message a little bit was they said that every email they've been getting from disaffected members is going to their leadership team to read because they want to understand the impact to the individuals of whatever decision they're going to make. I think that's sort of, in my mind, classic Disney service, right? To say, we're really interested in what the individual impact is here, not just the sort of bottom line. So,
well, and I think, Tim, I'm sorry, Chad, but Tim, your article was fantastic, by the way. My whole last episode of my podcast was about your article. Honestly, we talked about it for like 45 minutes because it's a complex topic and you broke it down into a very easy thing to understand. There's too many points in the system and there's not enough availability to fill that, right? So it sounds like an easy idea, but when you laid it out, it was very evident to a lot of people what the problem is here, right? And I think here's my question to Brian and anybody else who's losing points. What would make you happy? Like, what's the good remedy for this? Like, because and that's not me saying like, you don't deserve anything, because I am completely sympathetic. Like, I totally think you do deserve something.
That is textbook worst case scenario. Okay. Yeah. 200 grand Cal points, the most expensive points in the system. Right Absolutely. There, boom, right on the chin, It's,
yeah, and like, so, because I see people saying, oh, give me a free dining plan, give me a free AP for a year. It seems like no matter what they come up with, there's going to be somebody that's like, I don't like that thing. Why didn't they do this? Or why didn't they do that? I feel like it's going to be lose-lose no matter what they do. They're in a bad position here. They're in a very bad position here. There's nothing they could do. Now, if they refund your the dues that you paid on your points, then I think that's probably something that would appeal to everybody, right? Because it's like, oh, I got my money back. I got a refund for what I couldn't use. But outside of that, I'm just wondering what else they can do. Out of curiosity, what would make everybody happy?
Then the question becomes, how do they pay for that? Okay.
Exactly.
Russell on YouTube makes this. He says, create a special assessment for everyone to cover the costs during the shutdown and refunds to dues to those who lost points. I've been hanging on to that one. By the way, I'm not ignoring people's comments here. I'm just trying to work them into a 5-person discussion. Okay. And so that's an option, some kind of a special assessment that's out there so that you can do that. I'm not opposed to that either, because it's like, what is fair in this situation? Okay. And it's the same way of asking the same thing that you said, Tom. What would make you feel better? And what would make the people listening that have lost points feel better? Okay. What do you think is a fair remedy to this, and who pays for it?
Well, I guess I would, so Tom, just to answer the question you raised, I would ground it in like one of two tracks here. I think the interesting idea of refunding the dues for the points, that's sort of like, in my mind, that's one of the clearer paths for me. Great. Because that's what you would get out of travel insurance, right? If like I have travel insurance on my points, if I can't use a stay, I get a refund of my dues, end of story. So it would just be backstopping travel insurance that didn't actually, like, I have the travel insurance on my points and they're not going to cover this, right? So like it's that kind of scenario. If I had to guess, I would think that Disney might be grounding their hope here in a remedy that would, again, make the product usable. That seems to be the solution they've gone for across the board in the sort of what we're defining as the consumer space. How do I make that AP continue to have value and use for you? I'm going to extend the life of it, right? So I'm kind of hopeful they find some solution that's like, how can I make this product continue to have use for you? I sort of wonder in my mind how much capacity Disney's going to have across the product lineup that's going unused for some period of time, right? To be able to say, look, we've got a ton of hotel inventory around that no one's staying in. So rather than have a bunch of disaffected members, let's find a way to get them in those hotel rooms. Or I'm deeply concerned as a Disney Cruise Line podcaster, right? Like, what is the capacity going to be like on the Disney Cruise Line ships for the foreseeable future? Because I think that cruise market's taken a pretty big hit from a reputational standpoint, given the news. And if they're sailing at half full, right? How do you not sort of look at a way to maybe allow members to use points? And I understand the corporate internals of that and the payments across and all of that, but it feels like
who pays for it, right?
Well, fair, yeah, but I think Disney would have to step in and pay for it at a corporate level. I think they'd have to say, like, look, to maintain the goodwill of the members and the product, we're going to do this, right? They'll have to take the hit. So
it is interesting because I think a lot of people, it is the same company, but it's a separate company. DVC is separate from Disney. I mean, and so when we say like free APs, there's a transaction that has to take place there, right? It's not just that DVC can be like,
that is exactly why I started this conversation, Tom, with DVD, Disney Vacation Development,
exactly.
Disney Vacation Club Management. Okay. And there's the parks department, there's this department. And if you know anybody who's a cast member at Disney, those business units don't necessarily get along and play that well together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is a negotiation that they do. Okay. So
anytime you do anything, there's a transaction that takes place on the back end. Like any of the things, pretty much all the things we do as members, there's something that's happening on the back end that we don't even know about, right? So that's happening between Disney and DVC. It's going. There's all sorts of things that we don't see.
Every Moonlight Magic event, DVD writes a $500,000 check or more to the theme parks. Okay, so that we can have that Moonlight Magic party. Okay,
the lounge I'm sitting in right now. That's not they're renting this space essentially from the parks.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Chad, because I think one of the resolutions, maybe they'll pull back on both of those and use the money from those for whatever resolution that they come up with. If it's booking Disney hotels, why spend $1 million on Moonlight Magic when you could be paying for hotels for members?
Yeah, and somewhat smoothing this out. Okay, I think that's a really great point, and that's part of. I was holding a couple of rooms for Moonlight Magic dates at Grand Cal this fall. And that's when I said, they're probably going to cancel those. So why don't I just cancel my reservations and bank them while they're still bankable and then start to hold something down early next year? Okay. And that's exactly what I did. We don't know when our February break is going to be next year, but I had enough points to hold 8 nights. So I did that. Right.
Let me ask you this at the panel. Is there a scenario where some members don't get screwed? I feel like there's no scenario where someone's not getting screwed here.
How do you mean? I guess, how do you mean? Because if Disney steps in to sort of massage the issue from a budgetary standpoint, I'm not sure anyone gets disaffected. And the other thing, the other thing that sort of weighs on me is what you're talking about are two. I think it's 2 use years who are carrying the primary weight on this at the moment, right? So I get it. We don't know when this is going to end. I think I just saw news that like Spain and Italy are talking about keeping their borders closed through December or May of next year. So we don't. It seems like the U.S. is a little bit more open to reopening business at this point. So I'm hopeful that Disney will be restarting operations at some point in the next few months. But if it continues on for much longer, it affects all the use years equally, then it's a different conversation for sure.
Well, that's another thing, right? How many guests does Disney have that are from overseas that can't even get here?
Yeah. But
my podcast co-host is from Canada. He can't come here right now. Even if the parks were open, he couldn't come here.
Yeah. Which speaks to the potential availability of space at the resort, right? How do we get people in the door just spending money from a budgetary standpoint? So
yeah, that doesn't mean he couldn't rent his points out and those points couldn't get used that way. Okay, so even though he can't do that, he could. I'm just
saying in general, that's going to affect a lot of things too, right? And the fact that I don't know what the percentage of people that go to Disney from overseas are, but it's pretty, it's a decent percentage sizable. Of the guests. Okay. It's a sizable percentage, and that group's going to be completely taken out of this, right? So, does that free up other inventory for, DVC to do what we're talking about? Maybe allow them to stay at other resorts or, I don't know. There's a lot of variables here. And I think that's why DVC hasn't really said anything clearly yet, because they don't really know. They don't know. They know as much as we do, I think. And I'm sure they have some ideas, but
I think that was the main thing of Tim's article there was saying, hey, look, there's so much unknown at this point in time that maybe we should cut them a little slack till they figure things out. Okay. And I think that's a really, really great message. Absolutely. And that's one that I'd like to double down on and reinforce here. Okay, is let's cut them a little slack while we figure things out.
This is unprecedented, right? And that's what I liked about your article, because that's how I felt about this too. Let's figure it out. I think everybody's living day to day at this point, right? We're all living on a day to day basis. DVC is run by people. Okay, they're run by they're run by you and I. It's not. They're not any different than any of us. They are dealing with own things with their families too, and with all of that's going on, we're all just kind of taking it day by day at this point. And I think we just need to cut them some slack and just give some patience. And I know that's hard, and I'm sorry, Brian. I feel so terrible that anyone is losing points. Honestly, I would feel
absolutely.
Awful. Right? I'm in a perpetual state of borrowing, so I know nothing about this because I never have points in the use year that I'm in. So I'm not a good person to talk about this, but I do feel anyone.
I've got 200 grand cow points I can sell you. No.
Okay.
He expired in 3 days, so he's going to make you a great deal. Okay,
seems like a bad deal. I don't know.
But Russell on YouTube makes a good point here as well. He goes, for the April and June use year people, maybe they get a little bit extra grace because the August people had a little bit more time to react to this. Okay, because there is no July use year. So the August people would be the next up to get hit. And they had a little bit more time and warning on this. So you're really talking about 2 use years. And from looking at some of your research, Russ, that you've got on your site about the use year distribution, it doesn't seem like those are the most popular use years. If it was February and December where the majority of those points fall, then you're really going to be impacting a lot more people. Okay. But that's something else. Do we look at something and say, hey, special consideration for these 2 use years, maybe not as much for everybody else because they had more time to react? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the April and June scenarios because those have actually already happened. So, I mean, and you've seen some comments where people have like, what are we talking about? Since they've already essentially made the decision for those 2. So for April use year, if you had a March reservation, they not only did the extending the holding points, they also allowed you to bank current year points inside of your banking deadline, and they also unbarred points. So the only points you would lose is banked points in that scenario. But they only allowed that for that small 2-week window at the end of March, if you had, regardless of what use year you had. But if you had a April use year, that would be the last time you could use them. And then for the June folks, a lot of people have been doing the RCI deposits, which seems to be
yeah, exactly. John makes that comment right here that I don't understand the debate. The use year I have is June. I was already forced to transfer my points to RCI versus losing them. They were tied into a reservation for May that is not going to happen.
Yeah, and forced is a strong word. Because I mean, we still have until June 1st to find out what they're going to do, if anything. But some people are just pulling the plug now and saying, okay, I'm going to deposit to RCI, and at least I get
Well,
something.
if he had a June use year, I think he has to do that 45 days I think he had to put him into RCI 45 days early.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
April 17th, I think, was the deadline for RCI transfer.
Yeah, for a June use year. So that's what he's going. Okay.
Yeah, unless you want to hold out for a resolution, which, so I think a lot of people just said, I'd rather go with a bird in the hand.
Yeah, and then you've got people like Gene here who's saying this is a huge loss for Riviera buyers since it didn't open until December 16th. The 2019 points will be lost if they can't be used due to the closure. Okay, so she's saying, hey, my first year of points at Riviera, I didn't even get a full year to use them. Okay, because the resort wasn't open. So let's say she had a June use year. Well, she didn't get her points till what, December 15th? So she didn't even have a full year to come in and use those points. And I think that's a fair argument as well. Okay. And it's something else to go into the decision here. And
I saw an interesting comment, Chad. do you think there's any chance that they loosen the resale restrictions as some sort of, I don't know, goodwill? I don't think it really helps the inventory problem. Although more people could, I guess, transfer their points into the other resorts, but I don't know. I'm just curious. I like to ask questions.
Well, I think that
like
could be something they could do. I would really doubt that, though.
Me too. But
okay, now because the other idea that I thought of is, what if they were to take some of these Riviera points and they have something in their system called developer points, where it's points that the developer owns, but they give out to members. And usually it was, hey, if you buy your contract today, we're going to give you a bonus 500 one-time use points or 100 one-time use points or something along those lines. They could be taking some of those one-time use points as developer points and giving people some stays at Riviera, whether or not they do it to a resale restriction, because, man, they already took it on the chin with that one and ticking people off. Okay. And they, I don't know, that wasn't an intentional decision. I'm not going to defend them on that one. Okay.
Tom, I like your thinking.
Hypothetical.
You like my thinking, Brian?
I like your thinking. Anything. I'm a Riviera owner too, so anything that lifts that resale restriction is something I can get behind. So yeah.
Well, I was thinking temporarily, like not like permanently, but yeah. It's. I get you.
I mean, the one that makes sense is the ability to book the Disney collection. So, if looking forward, we're going to have the huge pressure of points on the future use years. So allowing all members to book Disney collection would make sense, just so they can, take advantage of the hotel inventory.
Yeah. And Tiffany here makes that exact comment. Personally, I would love to see them open up cruises for resale. It gets people on the cruise ship, gives other flexibility, but really nothing is going to be perfect. No one could have predicted this. And so I think that's a viable solution they could do as well to help solve the cruise ship problem. And it would take points out of inventory. The only thing we have to do is come up with the cash on that. Okay. Because when you take those points from inventory, from yourself, and you book a cruise with it, Disney turns around and grabs a DVC room and turns it over to the travel agents to sell for cash so that they can pay cash to Disney Cruise Line and pay for your cruise. So it somewhat solves the problem on one end, but they're still taking a room out of inventory on the other end. Okay.
Although they could be paying for that, and then it's essentially they're paying pennies on the dollar instead of just paying dollars on the dollar to reimburse you for this loss. So for every dollar of cruise that you consume, they're probably only paying 20 cents to actually deliver that. So
maybe in this scenario, right? Yeah.
Sorry, Chad. I was going to say, to Russ's point, let's say they do. Is a viable solution to drop the resale restriction for using the World Collection, and then lowering those point values, making it cheaper for you to actually do that? Because right now it's not a great value, right? To go and try to stay at Port Orleans with your points. What if they make that a lot cheaper and get some of that as a way to move people into those other rooms and open up some inventory in a way, and just eat the loss or whatever it is? Yeah.
Here's my favorite hypothetical for dealing with the April and the June points that are going to be completely lost otherwise, people like Brian, is they could, forget resale restrictions and all that. They could say, look, anybody who lost points, we're going to give you that number of points. It's a completely special circumstance. Here's the point chart for it, because I would hope that they would at least, come down off the Disney collection. And, if they're going to say you got to use them at like Port Orleans French Quarter or something like that, at least have a standard room there be equivalent to like an old Key West studio or something like that. And just say, look, you're getting these points. It's a one-time thing. Here's the chart. You got a year to use them. That's it.
It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's really not.
Especially if we're picking up unused inventory as well. Okay. Because if we can make the case of we're going to come back in and put a guest in that hotel room in unused inventory to spark more people traveling again and coming back to the parks, which could be an issue for them, I think that's a win-win scenario. Because then they can't really say, hey, they had the expense of cleaning the room, some wear and tear on the room, but you also brought in customers that are eating in your restaurants, buying your merchandise, and buying park tickets. Okay? So it's a small concession to be made there. Like you said, as a one-time accommodation to people who took something. Okay? That's a very valid option.
Them on the sales end for the next 20 years with stories living out there of people saying, Disney, I lost a year's worth of points, or 2 years or 3 years, depending on, borrowed points and that sort of thing. I lost these points and Disney couldn't do anything to help me. We've spent the last hour going over why that is, but that's not how the message is going to be out there.
That is ultimately the story that Disney's got to change. Okay. I mean, I looked at this early on and said, we've all bought into Disney with this deal that goes, Disney stories always end up with happily ever after. Okay. What scenarios can play out that we can still get some version of happily ever after and keep the branding and keep everything that we love about this company there? Okay. So I think that's kind of a key solution here.
I don't think anybody here or anybody writing in thinks that Disney or that DVC will do nothing, right? Like there's no way they do nothing. They're going to do something in some form of compensation for members that are affected by this. I don't think it's, for me, I don't need anything. Don't give me anything. I don't need anything. I wasn't affected, right? So the only thing that was affected is I had to reschedule my trip. And that's not the end of the world. Am I sad about it? Yes, but I'm not losing points. I'm not losing money. Well, I might be, because I'm going to have to renew my AP now, but where I wasn't going to. But but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a chance they do nothing, right?
Yeah, it's really just what do they do and who pays for it and how do they come back in, and understand that they have one sticky wicket to unpack here. Okay. But the reason why I started with the contract is if you look at this and go, worst case scenario, they stick to the letter of the law here. Okay. Anything they do above and beyond that, now I'm appreciative. Okay. Because now I understand what really we agreed to was. And now if we get anything above that, which we've already seen, I think that sets a tone to be appreciative and respectful for what they are doing. And that's kind of the big message that I want to come back in with.
No, and to be fair, Chad, it is a great message to give. And I did see some comments and discussions online around like, should we look at some sort of lawsuit or something against DVC? And I would firmly come down the side of 100% not, because a lawsuit might serve the purpose of getting somebody some compensation somewhere. I think it's unlikely given the contract language, but somebody some compensation somewhere. The real value of a lawsuit is to drive a different behavior on Disney's part in the future. And I think they did the right thing mostly here. I don't want them,
and they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want them keeping resorts open and putting people in harm's way just so that people don't lose points, like that sort of thing. Like they've done the right thing, and I expect they'll keep doing the right thing. So,
well, and truth be told, they're doing the right thing for the majority of members, which doesn't sound great for the ones that are affected, right? But the right thing to do for them is to not allow these expired points to continue in the system. Like that's for the majority, for the whole of everybody. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that's not something that I want to hear as somebody that's lost points, right? Like that's not a thing I want to hear. So, I just think if you look at it as an overall, they're doing the right thing for all of us. But I do think they still need to do something to compensate the members that were affected, obviously.
Yeah, and John makes a good point here. He's going, Tom, they already forced us to transfer points to RCI. I'd like those points back to DVC.
Sure.
So, yeah, because what's going to happen is they're just going to give that inventory over to RCI and let RCI come back in and book a room over at Saratoga. Why not come back in and go, well, not so fast, RCI. Our members want that. So, and Vicky was saying, let all those with expired points use the Riviera inventory. And I can drop the graphics and we can bring Vicky back in. And if there's any final questions or comments people have, because we're kind of at our hour mark, which is about where we like to drop this. I'm going to bring Vicky back. So welcome back, Vicky.
Hey guys. Yeah, I didn't realize there was so much Riviera inventory. I mean, just put everyone there, right?
Maybe not everybody wants us to hit Riviera.
I know. Someone's always going to complain. Everyone's saying
yep.
It's a beautiful resort. Beautiful resort.
It is. It's a great resort.
I'm in just for the Skyliner. Forget the resort. I just like the Skyliner stuff.
I'm with you.
Skyliner. Put the Skyliner everywhere, and I'm buying it every resort.
Yeah.
I am with you.
Yeah, you bet. So let's ask the audience any final questions or comments, and we'll give them a few seconds to post stuff. If there's anything else that they really want done, your solutions, your questions, your answers, that kind of a deal. And we'll address these final comments because we're already at our hour mark, and I start to see people starting to drop off as well. So let's go ahead and finish up this conversation tonight, and maybe we can hold it again sometime if we deem this necessary, or if it's deemed helpful to those in the community. So let's come back in. I know Kate says, I'm losing points. And if we lose points, get over it and move on. Yeah, I think it stinks, but I think there's an element to come back in and go, hey, look, we're owners. And, business owners everywhere are taking a loss right now. If I have to take some of it because of this, I'm not going to like it, but I guess I will accept it and go forward. Okay. Micah was saying, seems like the best answers are opening up inventory at Riviera and a special point chart to allow people to use lost points at additional resorts. I think that was a great idea. I think, Tom, you were going to say something?
I just saw there's a question, final thoughts on opening. I thought that was a good question.
Take
some stabs at that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to cover that now? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump over you, Chad. I was just going to say, I think as far as Disney thinks they're opening June 1st, as far as I can tell, they're putting up promotions for June. It seems like they feel like they're going to open June 1st. Now, what that's going to look like, who knows? Obviously there's a lot of considerations in place there, but I mean, reduced capacity, who knows what they're going to do. There's a lot of things that can happen. That's a whole nother podcast, right? That's a whole nother live broadcast of what they're going to do when they open. But as far as I think, if things keep going as they are, I think Disney's planning on opening June 1st. That's my guess.
Yeah. And at least if they open, it'll take some points out of the system. Okay. It'll start freeing up the log jam that we've got going on here. So if it's June, great. I don't know that I'll be going back in June, to be honest with you. And I have a Memorial Day trip planned, and it's highly unlikely that even if they said part of it's a split stay, so we're going to cancel off the first part of it, and June 1st, you can come in for 2 nights at the Bay Lake Tower where I have reservations. I'm probably still not going, just to be honest with you. I'm not, right? And
yeah, Chad's on the you're on the I'm not going to wear a mask to Disney side, and some people would. So for those that would, do extra measures, it could take away some of the, pressure.
I'd wear a hazmat suit to go. Just saying right now. I wear full-on Monsters Inc. Child Protection Agency. I don't care at this point.
What is that? You're going to declare a 2311 or whatever.
On yourself. Yeah.
I don't care. I'll wear it.
2319. Tom's in the park.
I need my Disney fix. I'm missing my vacation right now. Give me my CDA yellow jumpsuit. I'm in. I'll take it right now. Do it.
So, okay. And Jason was making a comment here. Buy the next 2 years worth of points back. And
wow. Can you imagine those future resales, like has a little asterisk and says like comes with COVID, bump that they got on it or something like that.
Oh yeah. No kidding. No kidding. But any kind of
non-transferable.
I do see them.
I'm sure it'll be non-transferable. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I do see them coming back in and doing like that, buy a gold pass and get platinum again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That would be a great promotion to come out there and create some goodwill to start to buy down some of this frustration. Okay. And
a lot of some of the hypotheticals with allowing people to book, moderate resorts or more Riviera, all that. I think one of the issues that Disney itself hasn't even addressed yet is how the theme parks are going to be impacted by this. And whether or not they'll be in a state where they won't be able to pull these hotels on, depending on how many people they're going to be able to let into the parks.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think Kate brings up a really good point as well to keep in the background with this. And I'm so sorry to hear about this, that your son is in acute critical care in Chicago. She says, get over this and just be glad you're healthy and move on. And we have so much to be thankful for. The last thing I'm really worried about is losing some vacation time, when I'm just glad that I have my family. My parents are in their 80s. So far, they've been avoiding this stuff. So much great stuff to be ahead about.
Totally agree.
Yeah, totally agree with that one.
It puts things in perspective when that kind of thing is going on. And I hope your son gets better soon, Kate. That's unfortunate. And it definitely, I understand your perspective here, because that's a lot more serious than losing some points. And that's, I think, the perspective I think a lot of us need to have, right?
She's saying that he's a doctor and he's not sick.
Okay.
But
That's
he's
good.
still
Front lines,
at risk,
though,
right?
yeah.
So,
he's okay. So I got it. He's working.
Yeah. So
acute.
if anybody deserves some free vacation points, it's that dude.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Give that guy some points.
Yeah. Give that guy some points. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for clarifying that, Kate. So we got that picked up. Right. And so anyways, I think we've covered a lot of the comments that have come in tonight that I possibly could. We've had just more comments that I could possibly process tonight. So if I didn't get to your comment tonight, I'm sorry. We'll try to work them back in next week. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. And thank you, Tim, Tom, Vicky, Brian, and Russ for joining the show tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Okay. And just so that we can do this, Tom, they can find you Welcome Home Podcast.
Welcome Home Podcast on Facebook. Welcome Home Disney Waitlist is our group. WelcomeHomePodcast.com if you want to look at our really awful website. But look for the podcast out there. Chad's been on a bunch of times, and lots of actually Russ has been on too. we've had a couple of people on. So Yeah, check us out, please.
Yeah, you're like me. I just like inviting people onto the show and sharing the story, right? So, Brian, and where can give us one last sign off here for DCL Duo?
Sure, you can find us at DCL Duo on Twitter and Instagram and on Apple Podcasts and most of the major podcast providers.
So awesome. Okay, Tim, DVC News. Maybe we got some audio issues there.
DVCnews.com.
Yep. And sign up for his email newsletter. I love reading those articles.
Oh, cool.
And if you don't get them on his newsletter, you'll get them over at Russ's website, which is dvcinfo.com. So
Yep. And we're also on Twitter and Facebook, and we have a forum on dvcinfo.com, which is our main, where we continue there.
Yep. And the beautiful part about that forum is that you can do historical searches. Facebook tends to just be a flyby conversation.
Mhm.
And there you can actually go through archived conversation and search for documents and things along those lines. So a lot of great things over there in that forum. So
I go to both of those websites to get smarter. I'm on your sites weekly. You guys are the best. The only reason I know anything about DVC is because of your two sites. Just
We're
saying.
not worthy. We're not worthy.
100%.
That's what it's there for.
Okay. And Vicky, you're going live with me all the time now. You're just like part of the regular co-host and family here.
Yeah, join us for trivia Wednesdays and Fridays, right? Yeah.
During the COVID lockdown, we're hosting trivia nights on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. and Fridays at 9 p.m. And Vicky is a core part of that process. And as Gina reminds us, stay home, stay safe, and stay magical. And normally at this point, I'd bring Gina up, but there's a limit of 6 people on the screen. So thank you to Gina for producing tonight's show. And I wish everybody to take this information and go out and plan something magical for your families. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.